Time to run it up. I wake up. Yeah. I wake up, flex, thumb down now. Check, no drip, this wet. Time to run it up. No sleep, no rest. Might crash, might wreck, but first I stretch. Time to run it up. I wake up, flex, thumb down now. Check, no drip, this wet. Time to run it up.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Profit Rocket Podcast. I'm your host, Victor Rancour. This is our episode number 20. Today is a very exciting episode for me, not only because the guest is someone that I look up to, someone that's crushed it in our industry for a long time, but also we're going to discuss, what's going on in my life and what's going on with Absolute Airflow and how we've been able to exit and why we're super excited about the future of not only myself, Absolute Airflow, and the Fix It Group. Mr. George Donaldson, man, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited about this one, and obviously the first thing I want to do is kind of jump in and talk a little bit about you, not just talk about the sale and everything like that, but I want to get a little deep dive so my audience knows who you are, what you've done in the industry, and then obviously what our future plans are. So first thing is, George used to run one of was it the 1 hour here in California?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess I'll just real quick go through my entire background. Really started as I'm an electrician by trade. Started off in commercial for a couple of years and then went to a small residential company in Colorado at the time called Candlelight. And I became manager of the electric department within a couple of years. And we started HVAC and plumbing. And suddenly I was managing, a HVAC and plumbing along with electric. And initially I had no idea what I was doing and really ran it like an electrician. You had to know how to sell it, install it, maintenance it, everything. And then we joined an organization called SGI. It really taught me a lot more. I grew that company. I got put in charge of the whole company in 2004 and grew it from $1 million to $17 million over the following 4 years. And again, the first part kind of winging it, then learned what I was doing more and more. And we then joined the 1 hour brand in Denver. There's a franchise, national franchise, 1 hour, Ben Franklin, Mr. Sparky. Denver was actually the first triple franchise under one roof at that time. And we got acquired in 2007 by Clockwork Home Services, and we were one of their company-owned stores at that time. 8 months later, got promoted to a regional vice president. And first got a couple challenges. Biggest challenge I got was in Nashville. Went and handled that. They got promoted to the West Coast. Biggest responsibility I had, and I had Oklahoma City, Denver, California. And the biggest challenge of the entire organization was an acquisition they made in LA. And then another one had became a problem right then in Riverside. And that was the 1 hour Ben Franklin. I added Mr. Sparky to that after I bought it, but I got the opportunity. I fixed it throughout 2009. It was right. The 2008 bubble crash really hurt that company too. And that was right when I inherited it. It was right into that, it was October of 2008. And end of 2009, I ended up getting the opportunity to buy it. So I bought that company, stayed on as a regional manager, helped Clockwork transition to Direct Energy, who they sold to, which was then the biggest company next to ARS doing what we do here in the U.S. And
How old were you at that time? So obviously you've come from managing, running, and being an electrician, and now all of a sudden you're an owner. What age were you when you did that?
So when I became a regional manager, I was 28.
28, wow.
When I bought the company, I just turned 30.
Nice.
So now I'm the owner of a company. We grew that company that I bought here from 6 to 36 million over, again, 4 years. And during that time, Direct Energy had bought the franchise, and I didn't align with the direction they were going. I was the largest franchisee by then. And I decided to exit and create Right Time Home Services. We created our own brand, and we're doing well. A year later, ARS made me an offer I thought I couldn't refuse. Ultimately, the only business regret in life that I have is selling that company, but I did. Stayed on with them and changed their ARS stores in that market, or this market here, to Right Time Home Services as well. So it looked like a reverse merge. And we were suddenly the biggest here in Southern California at that point. And I was a corporate officer for ARS now, and they were the only company backed by PE before all these other companies started getting in with PE. So I didn't go to the board meetings, but I learned a lot about private equity to an extent at that point, being a corporate officer. And stayed on for a couple of years, but really just got burned out of the corporate mentality type BS. And because a lot of it really politics and certain things did exist there. So I decided, it was best to, I thought I was going to retire, man. I literally legit thought I was retiring from this industry. I knew I wasn't retiring, but wanted to go do other things. And so in the end of 2016, left there and looked into many industries.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So, you're exiting this business. You're still young, right? You made a good amount of money. You have all this opportunity, but like you said, it's one of your regrets, right? Like, so you maybe want to talk about the feeling of when you first sold it, how you were feeling, because there's a lot of people that are, maybe thinking about exiting their business like I did. And we'll talk a little bit about the emotion, the stuff that I'm going through. But at that time, you want to talk about like what was going through your head, like as a young guy that's got all this opportunity, and now you kind of gave up your baby. So how did that go with you?
Yeah, I'm not typically somebody who is fear motivated. Like, I usually don't fall into politics or what's going on in the world or that type of stuff. There's a number of things happened where I really felt like selling the business was the right thing and the best thing to do at the time. And feelings are feelings. They don't necessarily mean anything all the time. And just a lot of things happening in the world at the time, I thought it was the best thing to do. And I wasn't looking to sell. They came to me. So just the way a number of things played out, I really felt like that's what I was supposed to do. So initially, I didn't have regret. There was a point where I did looking back, but initially I didn't, because I thought that's what was supposed to happen. Not just, I'll tell you, not just for myself. I really thought so for my people. And I thought it was the best opportunity. I really believed that within that situation. And that was one of the few times in business that I was very wrong. And all that, it wasn't best for them. It wasn't best for me. But it is what it is. We all, can't look back, right?
Yeah.
Or you can look back, actually, just don't stare. And something I've learned from somebody, and I moved on. But when I left, though, our industry, there's the good and bad, in my opinion, to it. If you really run, I'm somebody who's just got to drive to be the best and push, kind of like you are, right? You just got to. Well, sometimes that can be bad if you don't control it.
Yeah.
So if you're pushing, which I'm always doing, it burns you out. Like, it's a lot. And our business has a lot of moving parts. The good to it is you could scale it to any size at will if you know what you're doing. And so I was just burnt out. And I'm like, I had a big responsibility at that time, near 100 million in responsibility. And I'm like, I felt good when I retired. At first, I was just like, I'm gonna look into other industries, find one of those simple model businesses that, like a restaurant. I almost got in the restaurant industry. I almost got into a couple different things. That had been right before COVID too. That would have sucked. So, but as I looked at businesses, I'm like, you could only scale. Every business I looked at had a max that even if I became the best at that industry, which at the time I know nothing about, I believe I could become the best at anything. But even if I did, I could only scale so much. These businesses, these service businesses, you can scale at will. So decided, I'm going to go find a company in Denver, buy it. Bought a company in Denver. I really bought a name, 1.7 million a year in apartment maintenance contracts, no residential service space. And so we knew we were going to weed that out. So essentially it was called Fix It 24/7. Loved the name, loved the logo. We changed it and made the logo better. And as soon as we bought it, but I'm like, there's a lot, I think, from a marketing perspective we could do with this, but I had no client base.
Yeah. And
I brought some managers with me that had worked for me, were aligned with me already. And we said, okay, we're going to grow this company. We have to advertise a lot. We have to make it work. So we're going to grow it to 10 million the first year. And we did.
Circle back on that.
We hit 9.7 the first year.
Circle back a little bit, right? Like he's saying, like, you got to get the right people. So, like, you want to talk about the power of, like, having those right people already ready to go and what that meant for your business? Because, like, going in there and doing it yourself is one thing. But if you got a team like that, and obviously you guys set a goal, how much impact was that to have the right guys with you?
Oh, you can't grow from 0 to 9.7 million without having a few people around you. I mean, but ultimately you only had 2 to start and one main guy, Brian Remington. And then, people that worked with us in the past came over time, but most of the people we hired, we hadn't worked with before and are still with the organization to this day, most of them. Really were essential in growing it. But a couple having that experience that we've had doing it over and over again is why we put it on paper. It wasn't an accident. We said on paper, we actually didn't even technically hit our goal because we said 10 million. We hit 9.7. First year though, first full year owning it, 9.7. Now, 6 years later, it's well over 30. And now I joined private equity in 2020. This right here is our 5th branch. We've now went over 100 million.
So when you are coming into, you bought a business that was doing nothing to what you're doing now, right? You're doing residential replacement. You're doing property management probably and all these things. Like when you came into there, like, a lot of people, I talk to contractors all over the place and they're like, I got, commercial and this and that and that. How important was it to start like narrowing down to like, obviously this is what we do, residential replacement. You came in and what happened with the staff that was there, or what was that like? Obviously when you first come in and say, hey, look, we're not doing this anymore. We're doing it this way.
Yeah, there were 7 people. So, and really at the time, there's one that's still there. That's still with us to this day, who's a really good technician named George. So other than that, it was over time, one by one. Some didn't work out and fit the culture, fit the whatever. Some lasted for a few years, some didn't. Some left right away. But we had, we have an ability to just tell people what we know within our industry, what we're good at, and we have a track record too. So it was easy to really. It's always easy to recruit and bring people onto our team because the biggest thing is they understand if they've worked with us before. Or even just by reputation, culture. Culture is the biggest reason that companies lose good people. And it's also the reason why a lot of companies gain good people is it just gets around, it gets out there that this company has really good culture. And culture is a lot of things. That's one simple word, but there's a lot to it. And it's just from the top down, how do you really care for people? You can't fake it. Do you put leaders in place that really care for people? Because they can't fake it. That's key. Always doing the right thing no matter what. Having an open door policy. Making it fun. Like work is what we do most. You make it fun. And do you truly create the most opportunity for them? Like everybody says, I'm going to pay them. I pay them most. And some people base it off like certain gimmicks, like this commission structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, these guys are making a lot more dollars. So which one do you want? And they come up with stuff that make it sound great and then actually make you believe while you're working there that you got it great. And you might have it good. I'm not saying you don't there's millions of different situations in the world, but when you really evaluate and compare, we don't ever, and I mean ever, in any of our branches lose our good people, ever.
Well, I think it was kind of funny. So 2017, I'm at Service Champions, and you mentioned Brian Remington, right? And he was a manager when I was there, and I remember really liking the guy. And I don't think he was there very long, but I still remember when he was talking about moving to Colorado, and I had no idea who you were. Obviously, I was still new in the industry. I was only probably in HVAC for a couple of years at that point. I think I got in 2015. This is 2017. And he's like, well, I'm going to Colorado, and I'm going to go work for this guy, George, and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know much about it. And the next thing I know, there was one of our technicians was like, hey, I'm moving out to Colorado. And I think there's some other guys. And that I could hear about it, and I'd heard about Fix It and then all these things you guys are doing. But I had no idea, obviously, in Service Champions, one thing they were good about is keeping you in a bubble, right? Like they're really good at departmentalizing to where technicians are just technicians. Sales guys are just sales guys. Office people and they separate everything. And I still remember people were leaving there, and I'm like, why would you leave Service Champions and go to this guy in Colorado? Who is this guy, right? And I think I kind of watched it from a distance and kind of saw you guys grow. And then I think I saw the announcement. Was it 2021 or 2020 when you guys announced your private equity thing?
Middle of 20.
Middle of 20. I think I remember the social media posts. And I think I was, like I said, I didn't know who you were. I just like to watch you kind of, you talk a little smack online, and I'll just see all your posts every once in a while. But you're really methodical, which is kind of cool. Some of these other guys that they try to talk back to you, and I thought it was pretty funny watching from a distance. So 2020, you partner with private equity. What was the thought process behind that? Like, why would you get into bed with private equity? What's the thought process behind it?
Yeah. So
are you enjoying this podcast as much as I am? Well, if you are, come see George live at the Profit Rocket Growth Summit this September 27th through 29th in Austin, Texas. Not only George will be there and many, many other industry leaders. On top of that, we're going to have Andy Elliott, Brad Lee, Hunter Cloudis, Tim Grover, Marcus Luttrell, among many other amazing public speakers that are going to come out and motivate you, train you, and help you get to the next level. The awesome thing is, because you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to give you not only half off, I'm going to get you a buy one, get one free from our party passes. So use promo code BOGO23. That's BOGO23. And when you buy your party pass, it's going to be buy one, get one free. So you and your friend will be able to come and see these amazing speakers and have a hell of a lot of fun at the Profit Rocket Growth Summit. Once again, it's going to be September 27th through 29th in Austin, Texas. Cannot wait to see you guys there. So 2020, you partner with private equity. What was the thought process behind that? Like, why would you get into bed with private equity? What's the thought process behind it?
Yeah, so some of my friends, like Leland Smith, Service Champions is a really good company, and they're really impressive. And friends with him, Ken Goodrich joined private equity, and I mean, a lot of people were. In fact, before 19, there were like a handful, call it 10 private equity groups in our space. Into 2020, 19, into 20, into COVID, 63 known, and that's just known, private equity groups have entered our space. And so that drove multiples up. And I realized, I'm very competitive, want to be the best at whatever it is I'm doing. It's like, all right, well, that's where the industry is going. And now that that's happened, it's not going back. So started researching a ton of private equity groups and found what I believe, is just the best, an amazing private equity group that really cares about people, aligned. One of the things, they were one of the first people I elbow bumped is right as COVID was hitting in the beginning of March. And we're in this meeting and they on their own started talking about servant leadership. And that's our whole model, servant leadership. It's our job as leaders to serve our people. And it's our people's job to serve our clients. If we all do that well, we all win.
Yeah.
And so that was their alignment as a private equity group, which is not common in private equity. I'll tell you that. And that was kind of like I was sold right then. And it's truly everything they said in that meeting's been true since I've been with them. It's been great. Because you can go bad with private equity. You really can, so you got to be careful. So really my reason for that decision was just I wanted to learn and grow and get better. I mean, I've done a lot in the industry at this point, and that I was never going to grow and get better if I didn't do something like that. And you report to a board and they challenge you, and it's been challenging. No doubt, but in a good way, most of it. And it's, everything has pros and cons, but I have zero regret to the decision. We've grown a lot. We have now with this over 450 people on our team. And in just, 3 years now? Not even, just short of 3 years now. And it's, I'm sorry, exactly 3 years a week. 3 years exactly now. Over 450 people. And we've grown from, at that point, was 19 million to now over 100 million in 3 years. Fastest growing platform, EBITDA wise as well, out there. But we're still at our base. And our goal is every time I go into a market, when we bought that company in Denver, I was there before, right? So it's the same competitors that used to be there that got bigger. They've been there 50 years. Who's the biggest? We're going to be bigger than them. And we now are in those markets. Before I left here, I wanted to be the biggest. At the time I left, I was. And it's always my goal to go into a market and say, we're going to be the biggest. Well, now it's also as a platform. I believe the biggest is Wrench Group. So we want to be the biggest. How fast can we get to the top? And the biggest thing is a lot of these platforms, just by history, if you just go by history, you look at consolidation eras, like Blue Dot, Service Expert, any of them. They all just buy a bunch of stuff. They're all like so different from each other. It's hard to manage at some point, and they implode.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of platforms I think are figuring that out. We're definitely one of them. I think more than most, where we won't implode. So our sustainability, my goal is to build the fastest growing platform, but sustainable. So we really, even though we've grown a lot in 3 years, we've really I've walked away from so many acquisitions. We've probably bought less than 3% of the total that we've looked at, and then the total opportunity less than 1%. And just looking at why I got into it, looking at what private equity was doing when we get into it, you said these goals, and we're on target to hit them. but we're still at our base.
Yeah.
So like you being a shareholder, Victor, like you're going to do really well because you got in right here at our base as a shareholder. You're a shareholder now.
Which markets are you guys currently operating in right now?
Denver, Dallas was our second. Charleston was our third. Phoenix was our fourth. This is our fifth.
Nice. And obviously, you know, coming into private equity, now you're doing the acquisitions. Like it's one thing to run a branch, right? Like having a location in Colorado, that's one thing. Now you bring on private equity and now you got to go prove it in other places. Like, you know, it's obviously, you know, you've proven it in multiple places now, but now you're operating multiple locations at the same time. What is that like? Obviously it changes everything you're doing now, right? So you're probably traveling a lot more. Like how are you able to go into these other markets and be able to start building that same culture, start building, you know, that camaraderie and inter obviously department communication, stuff like that? Because I know since the deals went through, I mean, I've had a bunch of people reach out from your platform like, hey man, welcome to the group, congratulations, everybody's really excited. So how has that transition been from going from one location to now I got to run all 400 people and worry about all these families that I'm feeding all the time?
Yeah. So one of the things in starting our foundation back to being sustainable and being a regional manager, being a corporate officer for a company, like I did have to travel a lot, chasing challenges all the time. If you look at big companies, I'm telling you, 80% of their time and resources are going to 20% of their challenges in their organization. So you want to try to prevent those and not have culture breakdowns and have an understanding and culture alignment. Culture is the biggest thing that drives us. So keep an amazing culture, always do the right thing, make sure every acquisition we made, 100% of the people make more money, 100%, and nobody leaves. Like I said, you know, when I say nobody, it's a very low percentage. And usually the ones that do are kind of asked to leave, right? It's not like most people are the owner's family of every organization we've acquired still with us. If there was family involved, 100% to this day, because we only make it better. I don't care how good the culture is. Like this culture, like I was just telling these guys in this meeting that we just had, is amazing. I could see it immediately. We're just going to keep building on that and making it even better and better and better. The general manager has been with you 4 months. That's running this branch. He used to work with me in that culture. He understands it. He's aligned with it. 3 out of 4 other GMs he knows he worked with. They've all worked together. Our whole management team, a lot of our management team, but our general managers are already aligned with that. Now, along with that, each of them are developing from within current managers and positions, and we have a program that we're hiring high character, high energy general manager trainees that we're training up to eventually go take a branch in other markets that we're not in. That's part of being part of that program, is you have to agree and tell me 5 markets we're not in that you're willing, after we develop you. It'll take 18 to 24 months because they're not from the industry to develop those guys. Then we have every level. Field people are developing into managers developing into higher level management. If you keep every GM with the same alignment of that culture that I was talking about, then I actually don't travel much. I don't have to travel a lot. And I want to keep it that way as much as possible. And then we'll have regional managers and stuff too. So when I'm traveling, I do have to a lot more than I had to because board meetings and acquisitions and that type of stuff. And I'm highly involved more than most. Actually, my private equity group tells me I'm the most involved CEO they've ever seen with acquisitions, just because I'm so connected to the marketplace and I love doing it too. But I also understand I have a knack for seeing something like this, Victor, where I'm like, I tell right away with most of them, like, no, won't work, won't fit, won't align, won't. Where quickly I knew this one is perfectly fit. And you've done a good job, Bill. You come from the Service Champions model, which is very similar to our model. And so therefore it aligns really well.
And I think, obviously, before we ever had this conversation, we'll go into a little bit, obviously, how we even picked up this conversation, because there was never any plan of selling or acquisition or anything like that. And it was kind of funny how it even happened. But I think when I first started talking to my managers about, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. And I think that, one of the big things for me is, like, if I was ever going to sell my business, it was going to be the right person. Like, it has to be someone that's going to take care of my employees. It's going to make sure this thing grows. And the fact that you said you want to be the biggest in the market, the fact to see my business that I started from a baby become the biggest in the market is going to be pretty cool anyways. But I think having my GM in place that's worked for you, a lot of my staff members have worked for you. And I had some conversations. I've had a lot of conversations about you And even some of them are like, man, like, you remind me of how George used to be back in the day, like just getting excited and getting, just growing this business. And I think that was one of the big things that was a deciding factor for me was like, first off, the market, right? Like California, like if you go sell this business to some random private equity group from Florida and they come into California, what's going to happen to this business? Like, what's going to happen.
It's happened. There's I'm not going to say names, but there's one who's already agreed to come join the staff here, who was a general manager of another branch that I think it was Florida. A platform bought and they crashed it.
Yeah, and California's a different market, and I think that was one of the things when we started. I was like, well, this guy knows the market. He's got a reputation of taking care of employees, and he's got a reputation of growing businesses and being very successful. And I think that was one of the things that I was like, okay, this makes sense. Because I've talked to a lot of different people about acquiring Absolute and all this stuff. And it's like none of them made sense. None of them really, I felt like really wanted to turn it into something like special and grow it and nurture it and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about obviously how this conversation came up, because I think it was kind of funny. I think me and you've gone back and forth a couple of times over the last couple of years just on social media messaging and stuff like that. And I think you had reached out to me. I think I had said something about Ishmael. I think I had said something online about Ishmael. And I think this is like early, end of last year, me and him were kind of going back and forth at each other. And I think you came up to me and you're like, hey, dude, like, it's okay to be say stuff, but like you got to control yourself. And I think it was kind of cool. Like you almost came to me more like, I don't know you. You're like, hey, dude, from the outside looking in, you need to lock it up. Like, you got all this potential, but you keep saying stuff like this. And it was almost like a Godfather feeling. Like you wanted to help me. And I think that's kind of how our conversation started. And there was nothing even talked about acquisition or anything. We're just kind of going back and forth about just maybe a mentorship and stuff like that. So you want to talk about a little bit about how we first started talking?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know at the moment that it was Ishmael, but you said something like,
yeah,
the post was, if I remember, something like, I only grew a company from 0 to 20 million, I guess I don't know what I'm doing or something. And I told you, just let your actions speak for that. Like you're going to have haters and, just focus on that, because you're right. I said, you're right. Not a lot of people could do that. There's not many people who have done that or could do that. And then you told me, you did tell me Ishmael said something that upset you, but I said, don't let him or anybody control what you say or what your emotions are. I mean, you control that. And at the end of the day, you're going to have, if you don't have 10 haters by summer, you're doing something wrong. So, but yeah, that's why I said, look, I could help you and mentor you on just really just letting your action, because you've done a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done a lot with other contractors, helping other contractors, so many things. Focus on those things. And that was my only intent, was to just help you. And I do that. I mean, gosh, whoever watches podcast, there'll be a lot of them who could say, yeah, he does that exactly. It's true from me. He helped me with this or helped me with that. I help anybody who reaches out. Sometimes I miss some stuff. Don't bash me if I missed you. But for the most part, and if I miss somebody, it's not intentional. I give people access to my managers. I went to Rhino X. There's 2 individuals there who said, "Hey, will you help me with X, Y, Z?" I've helped them a ton. A guy in Grand Junction and another one in Maryland. Where I don't have any motive or any thing in return. I truly just like helping people, and I believe it's the way God made me anyway, but made the world work. If you just worry about helping people, good things will come. I just like having that reputation of people saying, when I first became a manager, something I said right away just about my people, I want as many people when I'm done with my career to be able to say, I own my own business, or I've done this, or I've done that. And a big part of why I've been so successful in my career was because of that guy. That motivates me. It's not money that motivates me. The money will come.
Yeah, and
money's always come.
I think that's somewhere where we align too. Like, like the legacy thing is just as important as how much money you can make, right? Like, how do people talk about you when you're not here? How do they talk about you when you're not in the room? Or, hey, if that guy, like, I think a lot of people that do know me that know, like, dude, I genuinely try to help as many people. And it's kind of cool that we are very aligned on that. And it's something I didn't know, man. Like, obviously I didn't really know you. I just knew that you had a business in California. You grew this, you got this business in Colorado, you're growing this thing. And I look at a lot of guys from afar and kind of like, okay, that's some guy that I would look up to, or like I want to do something that he's doing, right? So I think you're one of those guys, but I also never thought that you were coming back to California, and I don't think a lot of people thought you were coming back to California as far as owning a business again. So like, You want
I'm
to
just
talk?
not, I'm just not coming back to live here again.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, he's like, see, I thought I didn't, even like when we first started talking, Mike, I didn't even think about that because I was like, he doesn't want anything to do with California. He moved out of here. He probably doesn't want anything to do business wise here. And so obviously we started talking, going back and forth, and I think you started just asking me a couple questions about the business and a little bit. And I was like, well, this is what we got going on. This is where we got to go. And I don't even know how it even came up to where all of a sudden we're talking about you possibly buying the business. Do you remember exactly where that started or?
Some point in our conversation, I said, "What's your long-term goal?" And you said, you jokingly said, "Sell it to you." And I said, "Why are we waiting?"
Yeah, I think that's where it jumped in, and obviously we let into that stuff, and this is months ago, and I think after that conversation, I was in Dallas. When we were talking. I think I was sitting at my hotel in Dallas when we first started talking, and then I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, I got a lot of stuff going on in my life, like, between obviously different businesses and different, obviously training and all these things. And I'm just like, I also knew deep down that I haven't had the focus that I needed to get this business where I wanted to go. Like, I haven't been the leader that I wanted. And one of the things that I was, thinking like, man, this is a great opportunity. I just couldn't focus where I needed. And I think that was something we started talking about and what you would do with the business and how you want to grow it. And I started just thinking like, dude, what's the best thing for my people? Like, I know that I'm mentally not there every day, like what they need and growing it and the focus that it takes. Because running a small business is one thing, right? When you start getting to 20, 30, 40 million, it takes everything in you to run it. And I started thinking, man, like, what would I have to do to get to where I wanted to go? And I just didn't think I can get there where I wanted to be by myself. And I don't think my staff was getting the person that they deserved to get them there. And I think that's where we started the conversation. So obviously, kind of fast forward now, I mean, it's been 4 or 5 months or whatever it was. And going through the due diligence process and all those things that, that takes to sell a business. Like, this is, I think, the coolest thing, because obviously talk about growing a business and everyone talks about growing it, but selling a business is a whole other ball game. And I think that I didn't realize the amount of stuff that went into it. And it's like, it's almost like being naked. And, George is over here, I'm butt naked, and he's just looking at me, and it's kind of awkward. And I'm just like, man, what the hell? And then every day there's something else. Cause you don't think about it. Cause if you're growing a business fast, there's so many things you're just like, okay, on to the next. And you don't really have that stuff in order. And I'm like, I still remember, I think, my accountant's like, hey, what's this purchase in 2020 on a fucking Saturday? I'm like, I don't fucking know what that purchase is, like, and the stuff that you have to go through. So you want to talk a little bit about, like, obviously, now they're doing the acquisitions, like some of the things that you think you're really looking for in an acquisition that, like, you got to have in order, or things that, like, really matter to the fixing group that are going to decide if it's some of the company you really want to align with.
Yeah, I think, every platform is going to do their diligence. I think ours is actually far less than most. We're pretty lenient. We typically just what I look at first and foremost is culture. Like, what do I feel the culture is like of the business and the people, and for me, like, what's leadership going to be like today? What is it today backwards and today forwards? And is it the same leadership? Is there adding to it, or what does that whole dynamic look like? And people try to ask me all the time a lot of these questions about acquisitions. It's like, no two are the same. No two are the same. But common is, even if they tried to have their ducks in a row, they typically don't. That's common. So we're used to that. And so it's just getting a lot of information it's really just financial for the diligence side, right? We have lenders, we have people who have to sign off on it. They're going to verify that the revenue is what it is, and that those type of things, and that there's not going to be like a legal issue or any of those type of things. They're going to look into legal, financials, all that type of stuff like anybody would. I personally just look at the culture, what the opportunity is, what's happened up till now. Do we believe we can enhance it? Do we believe we could take these people and grow them and make them better and make them more money? And if all those things align, and we believe, undoubtedly that we could do those things, then, that's where I want to start having discussions further with somebody is making, after we make sure they align in as many ways as possible with our organization. One thing yours had that, not all have, but you have the turnover process and mentality in the field.
Yeah.
And a company that doesn't It's just a lot harder to get to really show them and teach them that understanding. We're really good at showing them and teaching them, and they always end up making more money. But getting them there mentally, it's usually just an ego, pride sort of thing. And sometimes it's laziness. They don't want to actually go there, see a 20-year-old system, take it apart, clean it, and do the right thing. They just want to hurry and go try to sell it. Well, I don't want that guy focused on selling anything, right? Just do a really good job for the client. That'll lead to the replacement. Should it be replaced? Absolutely. We all know that. You try telling the client that right up front, you'll get sales, but a lot less of them than I will. Yeah, and that's what your company understands and our culture understands, and we're aligned in. So, that's probably the biggest thing. Like if somebody's like, at least for our group, and not just ours, Service Champions the same way.
I think that's
Gettle's the same way. Some of the top platforms understand the turn process really well.
And I think that's one thing, obviously, I got blessed to start at Service Champions and learn that process. But I think that's one thing from day one. And, a lot of people are like, well, you grew your business fast. I'm like, well, you just did the right thing, right? Like, and we have it in our office. It says reputation before revenue. And that was one of the conversations we've had since day one is like, do the right thing. Our tune-up process, everyone thinks it's crazy when I talk to them. They're like, you're spending this much time and doing all this work on the tune-up. And it's like, dude, it's not about how much, time you're spending there. It's building up that relationship, right? And I talk to my technicians all the time. I said, look, you might not get nothing today, right? That sucks. But guess what? The next call, you might benefit off the guy that got nothing last time, and he fell in love with the customer fell in love with the company. Now they decided you come out, you do an amazing job, and all of a sudden now you're getting business off the last guy that busted his ass for you. So when you're out there, you got to bust your ass for the other guy that's going to feed you. So it's kind of a back and forth thing. So where it's like, yeah, you might not get the customer today, but if you build a relationship with those customers and they want to finally do business with you because you guys have always done the right thing. And I think that's one thing that's allowed our business to grow and get where we're at, and thousands of 5-star reviews in a short period of time is just doing the right thing. And I think that's something that I saw that because I have friends that work for you in other branches, and I think that was the one thing that stood out too, was like how you guys do your process and how you treat the customers and do things the right way. Because there's so many companies out there where it's like, oh, we're just coming to smash and grab, right? We're just coming there to get as much money as we can, and then 2 years from now that business is burned and it's on to the next company.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, right? And I think it's how our industry is for the most part. But the guys that understand the business and the ones that want to be around for a long time have understood that, hey, look, you got to put the customer first. And I think that's something that really aligned with what I wanted to do and where I wanted to see the business go is what you guys already do.
Yeah. If my guy coming to your house is allowed to sell you a new system and is commissioned to do it, and it's going to lead him to do the wrong thing ultimately. However, our guys make far more money, 7-figure incomes, high 7-figure incomes, highest over 300, even 400,000 a year. And when they're running calls, they're not going to your home, doing a tune-up and trying to sell you a new system. They're not even allowed to. And, I talk about it to my people in meetings all the time. If you go there, focus on money, it's going to lead you to do the wrong thing. If you focus on just doing a great job for the client, then and looking for the win. What's the win? Relationship building. I did this great thing for the client, found this, fixed this, helped them.
Yeah.
And if you do that, there's the win. What was the win on the job? How many wins did you get? There's several wins you can get. And sometimes it leads to our company getting a replacement at some point. But, if we just do our job and do what's right and do what's, money will come. And the way our structure is, rather than commit, you don't have to make this full commission to go do a tune-up and sell somebody a new system. Our industry mostly does that.
Yeah.
Clients know that. They hate that. They're thinking this guy's going to come take advantage of me, and then most companies are right. And in our organization, I know as the owner, that's never going to happen.
Well, I think even I still remember, being at Service Champions, being a technician. And I remember we'd get a $30,000 sale. And the first thing Leland would ask is like, did you sell them the membership? Because that means you did a badass job, right? Like you get someone to sign up on a membership and you bust your ass for them. And if they sign up on a membership with your company, that means that you did something that they believe in, right?
Right.
And that was something I've always taken as like, okay, lead with service, right? If most people are replacement companies, we're a service company. And when we talk about it, hey, look, if my job is to make the system last as long as possible, and God forbid the day it finally fails, I hope that you give us a call and you give us an opportunity to replace it. And that's how I talk to customers, and that's the way we've always pitched it. Because if you do it that way, you play the long game rather than trying to do it that way, they're going to tell 10, 20 more people. It's the word's going to spread that you guys are doing an amazing job. And I think if you're listening to this, guys, and it's like most companies we're just waiting for units to break down. How Absolute was built, how Fix-It's built, right, is, hey, we're not waiting for the unit to break down. We're going out there for service. We're going to provide an amazing job, and hopefully, they go and replace it with us. But that's how you guys are able to generate more calls anyways. We're not sitting around waiting for a repair to come in. We're going and creating revenue. We're going and creating customers through the tune-up process. And I think that's one thing that we really align on pretty well. So obviously now that you've come in, we did the acquisition. It's been a couple of days now. And I think one of the things you said, right, that you go into a market, you want to be the biggest. So what is kind of your plan here in Southern California as far as growing the business? I mean, where do you see Absolute Airflow going over the next couple of years in California?
Look, our goal is to be the biggest in the marketplace, and that could happen quickly. Some of these other big companies will implode. Mark my words. They will go backwards before they go forwards again, if they go forwards again. It gets to a point where, some of the leadership leaves. And when some of the leadership leaves, a lot of times the company goes the wrong direction. Just historically. I believe this branch will be among our biggest, if not our biggest, by the end of next year. It's a big marketplace, great foundation, scaling fast. Year-over-year revenue every single month this year so far is 100% in this company year-over-year. I mean, it's flying. So it's awesome. And there's only upside, and there's such a great foundation. It's not like we got to come in and rebuild a bunch of stuff or fix a bunch of stuff. We're just going to add to it, improve, and go forward much faster. And we have the capital to add to marketing and take over or take a lot of market share from a lot of people. We're going to do that.
And if you are in the market, I have a lot of guys that are in my market that listen, right? And you are a technician, you're a sales guy. And, one thing I always talk about is like, hey, if you're a good person, we want you, right? And if you guys are a good person and you guys want to do things the right way and you want to be treated right, you want a good company. And I think, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, like that sounds great, come give us an opportunity, right? Like, we're looking for good people. And I think that's one thing George talks about, and the same thing as me. Like, I can't train a good person. You're either a good person or not, right? And that's kind of what we're looking for here. And and we can't hire everybody, right? Like, I firmly believe if you try to hire everybody, and there's some companies around here, they'll just hire anybody that breathes, right? If you hire anybody that breathes, what happens is that culture is going to eventually die. You're going to implode from the inside because you're not going to do things the right way. So if you guys are listening, you're a person that wants to do things the right way. You don't want to maybe you're dealing with a corporate culture where it's just like, man, you feel like a number. I think that was one of the big things with this partnership is I wanted to partner with someone that didn't make the business feel like a number. I didn't want my employees to feel like a number. I wanted them to still have that fun culture. Obviously, we got to do things the right way. You got to follow rules, but at the end of the day, we don't want you to think you're a number. And I think that's one big thing. So if you're in Southern California and you feel like a number, come give us an opportunity. Come, obviously come in and talk and see what we're about. Because I think we're about to go do something special here, and we want as many people to be part of it as possible.
Yeah. So I want to add to that real quick. And if you're thinking about it, I would say inquire and don't expect to be hired right away, because I could tell you just over the last 2 days, people I haven't talked to in years, people are reaching out to Thomas. People are reaching out. It's like a waiting list.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't hire them all yet. We got to go figure out how to buy enough trucks. Like, we're ramping up market, ramping up a lot of stuff. The waiting list won't be long because we're going to scale this fast. But there literally is a waiting list now to work here. And it's growing every second. So I would get on the waiting list for sure. So I wouldn't wait.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect to be hired right away just because we literally have a waiting list now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's something like
it's reputation.
Yeah, the reputation was already there. Now we have the firepower and we have the capital and everything like that to go where I wanted to go, and that's what I'm really excited about. So obviously we want to talk a little bit about the future expansion of Fix-It and where you see it going, and obviously like circle back and people are like, well, why Fix-It over the other groups, right? Like, there's so many other private equity groups out there, but I feel like a lot of them have reached kind of their max potential, right? Like there's some big boys like the Wrench Group, like for them to get bigger and get more shares and all that stuff, for your shares to grow is going to be almost impossible at this point, right?
No, they're like 1.3 billion now. So for their share value to double, assuming the EBITDA stays the same, which usually, it doesn't, but that'd be 2.6 billion. Like, good luck. Like, just for your share value to double.
Yeah.
For our share value, like, you just be the shareholder. Your share value from today to tomorrow could double with one acquisition, much less how fast we're scaling.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the big things is I wanted to get in early on a platform that aligned with how I like to do business, right? Like, I don't want to be aligned with someone that doesn't do business the way I like it. I'm very, very particular. but also, yeah, the fact that we have an opportunity to grow. And obviously I've seen, me and Georgia talked a little bit about the growth opportunity and what the plans are. And I think it's, if you guys are growing your business and you guys are thinking about, man, like maybe I want to exit in the next year or two. One of the other things I aligned with on Georgia is that, with Profit Rocket is start teaching some of the core values that Fix It's looking for and the things that they do in the business to get set up to maybe possibly be part of the platform in the future. And try to help you guys understand what it's going to take to become a company that private equity is looking to buy. And I think that was another thing is that, George is allowing me to still do my training and do the things that I have passion in, but also trying to enhance it and helping with a little bit of stuff that they do to help my customers and help people to get better too. So if you guys are looking for a company or a organization where, hey, they're going to be able to come in, take care of my employees, do things the right way, and I'm going to be able to make a lot more money, and then, that might be something you guys want to reach out to George and start having that conversation. Because, I think the earlier you have the conversation, the better.
Yeah. Even if now is one time I can tell you, hey, in the next 12 months, do these things or implement these things, and no matter what, it'll help the business. But definitely, I would reach out sooner than later if you're looking for even how to build an exit plan. And by the way, I do this for a lot of people too, or with a lot of people. I've had meetings recently with other business owners and other, even in our Denver market and other places where it's like, hey, just make an exit plan. It doesn't have to be with me. I'll help you do it. And I'm super genuine about that. Like, I'll help you figure out an exit plan. And there'll be no shortage of buyers. Your opportunity within what you get is one thing to look at. Share value. If you were a shareholder at the beginning of Ranch Group, you crushed it.
Yeah.
I mean, you did. But at this point, I feel like we're kind of that. And I feel like we are that now. Like, we're here in the near future, in the next few years, if you're a shareholder of our group and where we're going, and with our sophistication, I feel like our management team's tenure and sophistication is the best in the industry. All of us together is like, we've so many people on this management team across the board. We've all worked together for freaking the last 20 years at this point in different capacities, and you can't make that happen. No. And it's just so we're all so aligned, and so we have so much experience, and we're all also the same as far as like we're learning every day still. We're not trying to be like, oh, we know it all. Right. And we're getting better every day. And there's stuff I've already found here in 2 days that you guys do better than we do in any of our branches, because that's what I look for. That's where we're going to go. A lot of these companies come in and we're the best and we know this and this is what you're going to do. Right. We never do that. Like, that doesn't work. And, but there are things that we make better, and I can help business owners start making better now just to better their business.
Well, I think,
if nothing else, they'll get that.
I mean, even one of our, local competitors reached out a couple of years ago, and he's, doing $40 million a year, losing his ass, and you were still willing to help him and help him start making money too. And I think that, even if you're not planning on selling or anything like that, just reaching out. And, I think this is one thing I talk about. And when I first started my business, it's like, I would never talk to anybody. I kept everything in. I thought I knew everything. And I think that's, one of the big things is like getting out of your comfort zone and asking people stuff that you don't know, don't understand. I feel like this industry is very good as far as people willing to help. If you're willing to step out of your own ego and out of your own way and have that conversation. I think George is one of those guys. It's like, I was always just scared to talk to him, but like, I feel like you shouldn't have to be in anybody in this industry that's doing better than you. I feel like you should reach out to them and figure out what they're doing, because the guys that get where they want to go fast are the guys that will reach out and ask the people that have already done it what they're doing. And I think that's something that's important. So if you guys are listening to this, reach out, even if it's not George or me or any of these other guys, like, just reach out to somebody and say, hey, look, this is what I got going on. What would you do in this situation? Because they've probably already been through it. I mean, George, 20 years in, he's probably been through every single thing you're thinking about having issues with right now. He could probably give you an answer to.
Yeah. And he spoke about it publicly. So that person was Ishmael. And the credit to Ishmael is, he was 40 million and was seeking not just myself, but I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And just kept reaching out. And he's very persistent, and was doing so with other people too. So, a handful of people, by doing that, taught him how to grow even more, how to be even more profitable, and did really well, and being able to sell his business. And because he's persistent, asking and seeking out the right people to learn from, and which is exactly what you're saying. And most people are scared to do that. And he was not only not scared to do that, he was very persistent. And I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I didn't know him at all. He's just very persistent, reaching out. And I assume he was that way with some of the other people that helped him, and it worked out for him. And so many people don't do that.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So, George, is there anything else you want to add to this podcast? We're going to go ahead and probably get it wrapped up. How can people reach out to you, or what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they do want to talk to you about either acquisition or even just a little bit of help?
Yeah, I'll give you my cell phone. I mean, text is easiest. And by the way, I'll never ignore anybody on purpose. I get a lot of text messages. So, you can reply even more than once if you have to. Hey, just bringing this back to the top. But my phone number is 951-316-5272. And email is gdfiredup@gmail.com.
So you guys heard that. There's not very many CEOs or people in general that are going to put their phone number out to a podcast where there's thousands of listeners every week. So it's going to be the guy that actually takes advice and jumps out and actually asks for help. Is going to be the guy that gets where they want to go, or girl, right? That gets where they want to go. So George, man, it's a pleasure. I'm excited about the future of Absolute. I'm excited about the future of the Fix It Group. And I'm excited about, obviously our partnership going forward. So thank you so much for obviously, trusting me and my business. Thanks for coming on the podcast. And man, like I said, I'm really excited about the future of our business and even the home service space in general.
Yeah, me too. We're going to do great things.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning into the Profit Rocket podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to make sure you get future episodes. Cannot wait to see you guys, not only, listening to more of the podcast, but we'll see you guys in Austin, September 27th through 29th for the Profit Rocket Growth Summit. We're really excited. Go to events.callprofitrocket.com. Make sure to get your tickets today. See you guys. Thank you guys for listening.